Welcome to Off the Beaten Pulpit with Daniel Frederick and Jeremy Spain-Hour, where we preach gospel, plant sequoias, and practice resurrection. We have no questions today from you, so another reminder to ask questions at offpulpit@gmail.com.
Or we'll just go on our own tangents and agendas.
We will,
we'll
which you do
drift
not
in
want.
outer space. You may want to ground us with your questions.
Yes, or get us off track with your questions. That's probably
true.
More often what happens.
Yeah.
We're going to add a new segment today, and from this point going forward, Jeremy and I both have something big coming up in September.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good way to keep ourselves accountable by giving a weekly update on our training. So in September, I am doing an Ironman in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And then
I didn't know it was in Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee.
You're the only 10 I see.
Stop it. Full Ironman. It's been a bucket list item for years, probably since I was a teenager. And finally doing it. Jeremy, what are you up to?
Well, I wasn't planning on divulging this, but I'm going to do a 100-mile race because I can't be outdone. Daniel, my running buddy, tells me he's going to do an Ironman. So I decide, just because of competitionism and peer pressure and self-image and self-worth. No, I've been, I wanted to do.
That quickly descended into confession.
Yeah. No, I wanted to do a 100-miler before I turned 40, and I didn't. And now I got to do one before I die. So,
according to your text, do it or die.
Yeah.
I think is what will happen in September. So it's fun. I think our races are a week apart. Both out of state.
Yeah.
Nothing against you, Washington.
Yeah. Stop raining so much.
So keep us accountable, and that was just the announcement. We'll keep you.
We'll keep you posted on our injury management, which is what training for something like this really is about.
That's right.
How are your injuries?
I'm back.
Okay.
At it. So I did a 55K. Jeremy is doing a 50K in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I did a 55K on just
big deal.
a couple miles longer than what Jeremy's doing. But I did get injured and thought it was a stress fracture. Still unsure, but got back to running 3 weeks ago. And then 2 weeks ago, ran with Jeremy again. Did 9 miles. I basically jumped from no running, 55K to no running to 9 miles with Jeremy, and it hurt me again. So I've done a few 4-milers this week and the leg feels good. The body, isn't it sad how quickly your body just...
Yeah, and I'm finding I'm doing a lot more trail because I injured myself on roads, and I'm running a lot slower than normal because I'm just trying to build up miles in the legs right now. But I've been able to keep pretty healthy in my legs. I had a knee, just a little thing going on with my knee, but I'm a big believer in icing. And sure enough, I just hit it with an ice regime over a couple days and kept running, and it seems better. So injury management is going to be the name of the game over the next 6
that's
months.
Stretching for me. If I don't stretch, my hamstrings get tight, and then the back goes. It's all referral.
All right, enough of this.
Okay.
Self-aggrandizing.
Sermons. I got the opportunity this week to preach at Thrive, which is a young adults ministry here, Kitsap and Gig Harbor.
Tell young people about Thrive. Tell, people, especially people, newcomers in the military, not married. It's a great, even if they are married, but especially if not.
I would say a half dozen couples at our church met and got married at Thrive.
That's really what I was saying.
Not that that's the only reason to go. Great opportunity. Also, May 2nd.
We are for young people getting married, though.
Absolutely.
Let's just take a stand there.
I'm for people getting married.
I'm
you don't just have to be
not
young.
even young.
I mean, I got married at 34.
Well, yeah. Let's say I am for young people getting married. Daniel is for waiting
for the right one
to pull the trigger. Yeah. We won't go into that story.
So May 2nd is the Thrive fundraiser. Are you going? I'm calling you out right now.
Yes, I'm going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come sit at my table.
Okay.
And anybody else who wants to, I'll cover your ticket even.
Oh.
If that's
everyone?
If that's inhibitive.
I'm putting this on them.
I'll cover your ticket.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, May 2nd, go to that. Anyway, spoke at Thrive, which was a great experience. And so I am not sharing in the Hunger for God series today. I'm sharing from the passage.
Not the hunger for the devil, is it? I'll be talking about that, thank you.
That actually is
it
an
relates.
Interesting, there's an interesting relationship to that in my passage. So I was given Mark, they've been preaching through Mark.
I gotta write something down.
I was given Mark 8:27 through 9:1. And this is a passage that, similar to the passage I'd preached earlier.
Did you say Mark 9?
Mark 8:27
Mark 8.
Through 9:1. Similar to what I'd preached in Luke, it includes the declaration of Peter that Jesus is the Christ, and it is sort of a hinge passage for this book. It begins Jesus visiting a place called Caesarea Philippi. And I'll describe a little bit about Caesarea Philippi to you and then get into the way I unpack this. And I think it hopefully made sense to everyone, even though what I would call my moving analogy, people hadn't watched the movie other than two people. So this is actually a test for Eddie and Jeremy if they're cultured or not. So Caesarea Philippi is named after two people, not one. It's named after Caesar Augustus and Herod Philip the Tetrarch. Caesar, so this is a place outside of Israel, ancient Israel or modern Israel. Caesar, someone who claims to be son of God. Herod, someone who has been given the title. Now, the Tetrarch would have claimed the title as king of the Jews. So, Jesus goes outside of Israel to a place that is named after someone claiming to be the son of God and someone claiming to be king of the Jews.
There you go. That's a difecta.
That is not the original name of the place. However, it is, and you have to enunciate this correctly so it doesn't sound scandalous. It was initially named Pan-Eus.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that one.
And named after the
Will you say it 5 times fast?
Named after the Greek god Pan, which we get the word panic from. So he was god of fertility, god of fear, and was thought to dwell in lush, verdant places.
Ooh, good word.
And so this area, rivers running through it, cliffs. Here you have this cave in the side of a cliff right next to this water where they would make sacrifices to the god Pan, and was believed throughout the region to be the gateway to the underworld. So this is a place rich with meaning, and a place outside of Israel, which is fascinating, for Jesus to choose as the place that he would ask this question.
Who do you say that I am?
Who do you say I am?
Actually, who do people say that
Who do people say I am? And then to Peter, who do you say I am? And so I will explain the image that came to mind and then how I interpret this entire passage from it. So here Jesus is outside of
This is, by the way, one of the most important stories in the gospel. It is the turning point in Matthew and Mark especially. It's in Luke too, but it's like a hinge. So super critical.
So that he chooses to not be in Israel.
Yeah.
To make this stand is fascinating. So I got this image of the Wild West Showdown. Because here Jesus, outside of his hometown, stepping up to a place rich with political meaning, Herod and Caesar, and religious meaning, Greek. So people had thought that, I did some research on this because it's far outside of Greece, but here they are setting up, idols to Pan and other Greek gods in this area. It was thought to be influenced by actually Alexander the Great. So Roman politics, which is their religion, and then the Greek gods. Here Jesus is stepping up, and I just imagine this showdown. And so to prepare for this, I watched one of the Western classics, which everyone should see. And I'm saying that after watching it again and thinking this is a truly great movie, which is Tombstone.
Okay, I was going to say it better be Tombstone.
Tombstone is a fantastic movie.
It's one of the greatest, and I think there are like diehard Western classics people who would think it's like too Hollywood. Yeah. But I'm not that diehard Western, and I don't go back to like 20s, 30s films or whatever. Tombstone's one of the greatest movies ever.
Yeah. Released in 1993, and true story, and fairly accurate in terms of following what
There's
happened.
Another Wyatt Earp movie that's supposed to be like super accurate, and I remember watching it after watching Tombstone and being super bored by it.
So you didn't like it?
No, the other Wyatt Earp.
The other,
yeah. It wasn't as good.
Okay.
I should watch it again.
Anyway. But Tombstone holds up. I'm going to say that much.
Yeah.
Tombstone really is a classic. And I did a deep dive into the history of it, and it is fairly accurate.
Really?
What happens in them moving to a town, them becoming the law of the town, them taking on this gang called the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And the showdown at the OK Corral.
Yeah.
And then following the showdown at the OK Corral, the Cowboys then come and ambush Wyatt Earp's two brothers, Virgil and Morgan, wound Virgil, Morgan gets killed, and then Wyatt Earp goes on what's known
on a rampage.
Yes, known as the his vendetta ride.
Yeah, and Doc Holliday is the greatest character
Doc Holliday,
just about any movie.
And that was the showdown I think more represents your classic showdown. So the OK Corral scene does represent it, but it's not this mano-y-mano, right, that you get when Doc Holliday takes on Johnny Ringo. That scene...
It's hilarious that you go from Mark 8 to the OK Corral, by the way.
Let me tie this together.
Yeah, please do.
Yes. Okay, this is... Okay. I was going to say this is brilliant. It's for you to decide.
Okay.
Because this scene between Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo, which you led me right into perfectly, intrigued me so much watching the show. So I'd already thought this scene is like a Western showdown.
Yeah.
Jesus taking on the politics of Rome and the religions of the Greeks in this one fell swoop, because where he's standing. And so watch Tombstone, and then this scene with Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo. So if you remember, Johnny Ringo calls out Wyatt Earp. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And Doc Holliday tricks Wyatt Earp so that he will get there before him and take on Johnny Ringo, because he knows Wyatt Earp can't beat him. I mean, the last scene, Wyatt Earp is with Doc Holliday at his bed, and he goes, "Can I beat him?" And Doc Holliday says, "You can't."
Yeah.
And so Doc Holliday
gets there before
him and takes him on. So I'm going to handle that a little more later, but watching them circle
sermon research, people.
Yeah, watching them circle one another, I thought, what is going on here? The history of the duel is rich. It's not just this thing that happens in Westerns. Think David and Goliath. right? Think
Hamilton.
That's exactly it.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Hamilton.
Yeah.
You just look up famous duels or showdowns, and they're all over the place. In the Bible, they're all over the place. And so the Wild West, though, we get to watch it play out on the screen, is fairly accurate. There isn't like Hamilton and Burr where they're walking 3 steps and turning around. They're circling one another. And so there is what's called the anatomy of the showdown. So let me walk you through it and show you how that perfectly mirrors what's happening in this passage. Are you with me?
I'm with you all the way. All chips in.
Okay, because check this out. I mean, if you can remember what's happening, I'm all in. When I'm watching a showdown, you're like, who's going to pull first? You know, there is an art to it because there isn't a countdown. They're watching each other's eyes, their hand movements, everything. But that's not where the showdown begins. It starts with what they call the slow burn, which is the building tension that leads to an inevitable confrontation. And so there's something going on historically, whether that's betrayal, insults, rumor, you said, she said, he said, that's, something's going to come from that, the slow burn, that all of a sudden comes to the moment where the showdown happens. The setting is really important in it, right? In the Western, oftentimes it's Main Street, high noon, public, visible, because the whole community, what's happening in the future all depends on that. It's this ultimate confrontation of good and evil. Yeah. And if evil kills good, then the community knows they're going to continue to be terrorized.
Yeah.
If good wins...
Oh, I see. Now you're making the connections.
If good wins, the community knows that they can celebrate. The streets are safe again. So that's the setting. Everybody's here to watch. They know what's going to happen. Then the confrontation happens, but the confrontation is not the draw. That's what happens next. The confrontation, if you see any showdown, I mean, think David and Goliath. Think of what Goliath says to David to call him out, and then what David says. David's like, I'm going to, he's like, David responds right back to him. The most famous most iconic line in the movie Tombstone is a line given in the confrontation between Ringo and Doc Holliday, when Doc Holliday shows up and he says, what?
I'm your huckleberry.
I'm your huckleberry.
Is that it?
Yeah. What he's saying in that is the confrontation prior to the draw.
It's with me, not with...
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
The context of that is, this is what all along has needed to happen. You know you could beat Wyatt, but I'm your equal.
Yeah,
that's what he's saying.
Oh, I like that.
Yep. And so that's the confrontation that happens prior to the draw. Now the draw happens in a moment. It is the deciding moment. Slow burn, setting, confrontation all happens, and then you get to the draw. And if you're they draw it out. Yeah. In any movie, you see the twitching of fingers, you see the slow movement. But still, even if you watch the movie over and over again, you're on the edge of your seat. Yeah. Because all that hangs on that single moment.
I can't wait to watch this with my boys.
I thought the same thing. I have a little longer to wait.
I was going to say, I don't know if they're quite ready for it.
And then the outcome of it, right? Smoke clears, and then what does this mean for the community in that moment? And then what I call the aftermath, which is the music rises before the credits roll. You get to kind of see a vision of the future, right? You get to see, the people reunited at a home, or the
you have two different
full of people.
Futures in these outcomes.
Absolutely. And so then you get the aftermath, which is a future you kind of get to see into it. And oftentimes that's where it will finally wrap up, right before the credits roll. So I'm going to walk you through this super quick, how this perfectly mirrors what's happening here in Mark 8, where Jesus rolls up to the setting, which is Caesarea Philippi. Very intentional, because Jesus isn't just claiming to be King of the Jews. He is claiming to be God over all things. And so that's why he's not just making this claim in Israel. He's actually making this claim over Rome and over the Greeks. So that's the setting. The slow burn we get right there in Mark 1, where it opens up and it says, this is the good news of Jesus Messiah.
And just thinking of over Pan. And Pan, the Greek word for all is Pan. So Pantheon. So over all the gods, you know, it could be, you know, this one God Pan, but it has that connotation of over all. Yeah,
I love that. So history leading up to it, I'm just going to run through this quick. Setting, the confrontation does finally come where they are in that spot, and then Jesus says, who do people say I am? This is that circling of one another that happens. As we know, Peter lays out a list of options, and then Jesus, again, slowly offers. Right? There's no fast words. This isn't something, a moment of passion. That's never what the draw is. If you come in over angry or over passionate or impulsive, you lose the draw. But it's this slow circling. And so who you say I am, you're the Christ, and everything hangs in this moment. But this isn't the draw yet. This is what other people are saying. The draw is what Jesus says, the draw being the shot fired, when he takes on a title that he has never taken on himself until this moment in the book of Mark, and that is the title of Son of Man.
Son of God.
Son of Man. And
who do you say that the Son of Man is?
And he began to began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things.
Oh yeah. So that's right after the confession, though.
Correct.
Which is, and just as a side note, the term Son of God would likely have been taken as more of a human term.
Yeah. Okay.
And the term Son of Man would have likely been taken as a divine term.
Yeah.
Because you're going to talk about this. Okay.
So this is what's important. Is you're right. So if he had said the Son of God must suffer, they would read that as in contrast to Caesar. That form of a title. Something I brought up.
Explain where that comes from? Because I don't want to just leave that claim hanging.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, so 2 Samuel 7, the Davidic covenant, when God promises to David he would send from his offspring a king who would establish his throne forever. This was the basis. This is the covenantal promise that God made. He says, I will be a son to him, and I will be a father to him. He shall be a son to me. And so throughout Israel's monarchy, this claim Son of God was understood, and particularly the messianic claim that the people had held on to for over 500 years since the Babylonian exile, was not taken to be a literal Son of God. Now, it turns out he is the literal Son of God, and God had been setting it up like that the whole way. But whenever you see Son of God in the Gospels, it wasn't quite clear. You can just assume that people would have taken that more as a messianic title. Yeah. But the term Son of Man comes from Daniel's.
Let me touch on that.
Daniel will touch on Daniel.
Yes. Thank you. That was a perfect setup for where I went with the group gathered there on Monday. I remember in college, especially at that time, and I'm sure it happens still, but I just remember hearing people claim a lot, questioning the divinity of Jesus. He never simply said, I am God. That's something that Jesus is accused of or questioned about. He could have just been more plain and said it. So this was my response to them as I went into explaining Son of Man is if Jesus had simply said what we want him to say, which is, I am God, that would have made no sense to the people. What they would have asked is, which God? Yeah. Especially in this place he's standing. It was the God could have been just a generic term. Jesus is far more articulate than that when he says, "I am Son of Man," because he is.
They would have heard it as saying, "I am a God."
Yeah.
Although the Jews, you're not saying the Jews were.
But again,
polytheistic.
what if he had said, "I'm Yahweh," right? That would have been which he does make I am claims, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But in relation to this, where he starts in this pivot moment saying "Son of Man," they would have all heard exactly what he was saying. Mm-hmm. Son of Man is taken from Daniel 7. Mm-hmm. And listen to the claim that's being made here of the Son of Man. "And behold, the cloud of heaven, there came one like the Son of Man. He came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him, the Son of Man," listen to what's given to him, "dominion and glory and kingdom to all people, nations, languages. They shall serve him. His dominion will be an everlasting dominion. It shall not pass away. And his kingdom one that shall never be destroyed."
Yeah.
Talk about a very articulate claim about who he is over all things in this place.
Yeah.
And so that's the draw. From that point on, teaching them that he is the Son of Man.
Yeah. And when he's on trial and says, they ask him who he is, he says, "If you are the Christ," he says, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven." It wasn't the claim of Christ that made them tear their robes. It was a claim of Son of Man, because that was blasphemy, and that was that is especially within the Jewish conceptual pool of images and concepts. That was a divine claim, and to say that he never claimed to be God in John 10. He says, "I and the Father are one," and it says that the Jews picked up stones to stone him, and they said, "You being man, make yourself God." So tell that to his contemporaries that he didn't claim to be God.
Yeah. Well, it is our simplicity, not the text, when we say things like that, which part of the job of a preacher, right, is to help people see what's there, not what we are either misreading it or missing in it. Yeah. The outcome is very interesting, though, because the draw seems on the part of the disciples to miss the objective, right?
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets good.
Which is leads to Peter rejecting the claim of Jesus, because it wasn't just that he was the Son of Man, but that he would suffer and that he would die.
Well, I was going to say he was right about the man, wrong about the mission. Mm-hmm. I think he's reacting not to the title, but to the job description. Because it says
I don't think those can be fully separated, though.
It's
not that not that he misunderstands what the Son of Man means, because I think he gets what he means. Right?
I think. Think about the movement of the story. It says from that time. So this is the first passion prediction. In Mark 8, Matthew 16. It says from that time onward, he began to teach them that the Son of Man must be handed over, suffer.
Correct.
This doesn't align with the job description of the Messiah, the Son of, because that's what Peter's confession was. Mm-hmm. You are the Christ, in Mark, expanded in Matthew 16. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God, is what he says. And precisely at that moment, Peter then begins to tell him, "Yeah, you're right, and I'm going to die." Mm-hmm. He does say on the third day be raised, but I don't think Peter has a category for this.
That's those are the exact words I use. Peter doesn't have a category in his mind for that, which we'll later get to actually my offering.
Yeah.
But, what Jesus is saying, the outcome will be, does not sound like good news to Peter. Yeah. And I think also for us, and I'll just say my offering, and I'll expand on it later, which is the Crucifixion by Fleming Rutledge.
Yeah.
I'm actually
it's
just introduction, which is lengthy. You recommended a chapter last year, which I'd read and started at the beginning now. And Fleming Rutledge talks about in the introduction at length on how the cross is foolishness.
Yeah.
And how the cross must be explained by God, because we cannot understand it without God explaining it. That's what it means for it to be foolishness.
Yeah.
That without God's
revealed.
explanation, it must be. And then so the job of a preacher is to explain the cross to people. It cannot be understood apart from it being explained, which is so helpful for me, especially as we approach Easter. And it helps me. I think of this morning, I was in a conversation with my
it makes me think of the Ethiopian eunuch. He's reading the scroll of Isaiah.
Yeah.
He says, how can I understand it without someone to explain it to me?
Yes. So as Christians, find language, seek language, be in conversation to by God's grace, prayerfully, develop language. And I don't mean develop it by something new, but I guess learn that vocabulary yourself of how to explain the cross.
And it is the cross that you need to explain.
It is.
Not just some moral lessons. I determined to know nothing among you except Christ and him crucified, Paul says.
Yeah.
All his theology was a theology of the cross.
I'll tell you how, even for me, who preaches this all the time, I'm confronted by the foolishness of it apart from an understanding that does come by faith. Yeah. This morning, I was reading the book here. As you can see, there's a picture on it, the crucifixion, by Fleming Rutledge. And my kids pick it up, or they would look at the picture and they say, what is that? And I said, well, it's Jesus being crucified. This is called stained glass. And Elliot goes, oh, I know that. And I said, tell me about it. And he goes, well, Jesus died. And he knows these basic a framework for it. And probably in a childlike faith way right now, it makes more sense to him because he's just taking it by faith. I feel pretty helpless, though, as a parent to add to that childlike faith, because apart from the way God talks about the cross, it has no human understanding. There's no human understanding that will touch that, which is so cool as we open up our scriptures to see what God says about it, that it is actually new things that we won't come up with on our own that must be said by God to us. So that was a little bit of a detour from this, but I do think in the outcome, what we see, right? The outcome is Peter's outrage. Jesus
he rebukes him.
Yeah, Jesus.
So he goes from being the first to officially confess him, and then within a few verses, he's rebuking him.
Yeah, because it's foolishness to him.
And then what does Jesus do to Peter? What does he say? Do you remember what he calls him?
In Mark?
Yeah, when he says, "Get behind me."
Oh, yeah, you don't have, you have the mind of Satan.
Yeah, he says, "Get behind me, Satan," right?
Yeah.
You're not setting your mind on things of God, but on the things of men. Which, interestingly, when he confessed him as Christ, he said, "Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven." So he's moving from revelation, God's revelation, to not the things of God, but the things of men, like you're saying. He was moving from God's revelation to his own reason, and he didn't have within his own rational categories.
Well, let's go beyond that, though. Beyond his rational categories, Satan doesn't have the imagination.
That's right. Yeah,
to comprehend the cross.
Yeah, and I'll get into this in mine, but human reason is not just neutral. It's based on human desire. And Jesus has this damning claim in John 8. He says, "You are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires." Think about that.
Yeah.
That what is the human will bent toward? We think, it's bent toward our desire. No, it's not. It's bent toward the devil's desires, right? We don't desire to destroy our family and leave our family and cheat on our wives, and yet every affair begins with what? Our desire. But no, you can see in the scheme of things, no, this is the devil's desires.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So I'll wrap up really quickly because it ties into that, and
Yeah.
I won't give the full outro to the sermon. But the aftermath, which is laid out here, is interesting because the moment where the music rises, Jesus' vision for what life will look like if we take his claim seriously, if we take his teaching for what it is, put our trust in it, is this, that if we would come after him, we would deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him. This is the first time the cross is ever mentioned.
Yeah.
And he had talked about his death and resurrection, but he didn't mention the cross. The cross is first mentioned in relation to
relation to us, yeah.
To us, which is Jesus's vision for his people, which is, going to what you're going to be talking about, is he goes, this is going to be the good life if you learn to deny yourself.
Yeah. Those who save their life will lose it. Those who
lose their life for my sake will find it.
Yep.
And I'll end there because I don't want to take too much time. But think of this in relation to the tense, intentional moment of a showdown.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening here. This dance around, guns drawn.
Yeah.
Jesus nails his shot.
Yeah.
But the disciples don't see it.
Yeah.
And then what Jesus invites them into is a showdown with themselves.
Yeah, right.
It is.
Yeah.
Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember in seminary reading a book by Davies and Rhodes, I think. It was two authors, Mark as Story. And because Mark kind of got neglected as a serious gospel for a long time. But now it's regarded as, and scholars, rank things based on kind of their own historical critical methods and values.
Yeah.
And they're
popular books at the time.
Yeah. Well, but now it's received like a disproportionate amount of attention to the contrary because, one, it's widely regarded as the earliest written gospel, and two, the genius of Mark as a storyteller and how he selects stories in relation to one another. And one of the things they pointed out in this story is the story right before it is the blind man Jesus heals, and he has to heal him twice.
Yeah,
because he spits, puts mud on his eyes, and wipes it away. What do you see? I see men like trees walking.
Yeah.
And then he has to basically finish the job. And they point out in that book that this is, in a way, becomes a word picture for what happens with Peter.
Yeah.
He sees Jesus partially.
Yeah.
Right? He confesses Jesus. He was partially right. Again, right about the man, wrong about the mission. Right about the king, wrong about the kingdom. And so he gets this kind of partial vision of Jesus, and then the rest of the gospel will be him following to clear up his vision of who the Christ truly is.
Yeah.
And he won't fully see it until the resurrection.
Yeah. Well, and that's the setting of the showdown, why this is a hinge point for the Gospels, is leading up to it, you have a confrontation. I mean, in the before the scene at the OK Corral, you have the cowboys that are terrorizing the town. In the true story, they're blamed for a stagecoach robbery that 2 people get killed. There's this setting that leads up to something's going to happen. A confrontation has to happen. This just can't go on. And at the confrontation, good's going to win or evil is going to win. And that's what happens. In Mark, you have Jesus healing blind people, casting out demons. You have him confronting evil. And he just can't go on a rampage like this without there coming a moment where a showdown happens. And so Jesus does walk into Caesarea Philippi, and finally you get the showdown.
I think it's also a kind of in the wisdom of God, showing kind of I have to say it, the fallacy of papal infallibility. Because this is the moment that God love them, our brothers and sisters, Roman Catholics, point to claim, papal infallibility, that Jesus gives Peter the keys to the kingdom here.
Yeah.
And, the big debate is, did he give them to Peter? So it's an apostolic succession, almost like a dynasty, which seems to be against what the whole New Covenant movement was about.
What seems to be. I humbly posit to you.
Yeah. Or is it on this confession? The confessing community is given the keys. And I should just point out, the only other time these keys, these binding and loosing, comes up is in the context of the community who does it in Matthew 18. It's in the context of the church discipline passage. So we find out what exactly he means by whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, loose on earth will be loose in heaven. But anyway.
Yeah, well, there's some subtext here.
And by the way, the translate, that's actually, whatever you bind on earth will have been bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will have been loosed in heaven. That is the correct translation of that verse. And it's really important because it indicates that we don't actually have the authority to bind or loose people. We have to obey Jesus' commands about excommunication because it bears witness to what is true on earth as it is in heaven. But that's a completely
two things. What we have the ability to do on our own is foolishness.
Yeah, that's right. I think Jesus said, apart from me, you can't do very much. It was nothing. Apart from me, you can do nothing.
Yes. Which he said between his prediction of Jesus, Peter's denial and his denial, which is fascinating.
Oh, in John.
Yeah, in John.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to on Good Friday.
Yeah.
What was available to us on our own is foolishness. Second thing, though, I think...
just let me finish.
Yeah.
The reason I think it is... It kind of undermines the idea of papal infallibility is because 5 verses after Peter is called the rock and given the keys of the kingdom, he's called Satan. Okay. And later Paul will have to rebuke Peter, who, if he's the infallible pope, Paul has to rebuke him. This is after the resurrection, after the sending of the Spirit, because he wasn't eating with Gentiles. And it says that Paul went and it said he rebuked him to his face because, quote, Paul told him he was walking out of step with the truth of the gospel. So popes are fallible. Proceed.
And I guess I'll just say subtext, research it more, but where he talks about keys of hell and all that, again, going back to Caesarea Philippi, the cave that they're at is viewed as the gateway to the underworld, literally the portal to hell.
To Hades.
Which, so that adds not just a subtext, it adds text to what Jesus is saying there. Take it in. Where is he standing? Where's the setting of this showdown? And that really helps us understand Jesus's cosmic vision far more than sometimes our little, because we still reduce him. We still reduce him to our little views of Son of Man or Messiah, rather than what he has built up, all the slow burn he's built up throughout the Old Testament, and now he declares himself to be.
That's a good point. Yeah, we will categorize him in moral categories or afterlife categories. No, everything he does and says is a cosmic claim. It has a bearing. It's claims on all reality. Yeah,
and so to just make that perfectly clear, he steps outside of Israel to show that Roman politics and Greek religion has nothing on him. He's standing over them.
That's right.
To make these claims.
And that was always, that was the revelation that God gave Israel at their very heart, the very core of who they were. The Lord our God, the Lord is one, the Shema.
Yeah.
It was that he was revealing that to a polytheistic people. And that's why he has to say, you shall have no other gods before me, as in the first commandment.
Yeah.
It wasn't validating the legitimacy or existence of gods. It was recognizing that this revelation was going to slowly make its way into the consciousness of a world of polytheistic peoples.
Yep. Which brings me back to the crucifixion book. The book is, I don't know why this hit me so much today. That requires explaining.
Yeah.
This gospel, the crucifixion requires explaining. And so if you're a Christian hearing this, don't think if you just throw out the outline that people are going to understand it. Really come to terms by the grace of God. Pray for understanding to articulate what this really means, and pray that people will pick it up, because it requires explaining. This isn't plain. Yeah,
and I think one of the things that will involve is recognizing the necessity of death, not just the necessity of Christ's death, or the death of God, you could even say, in a qualified sense. But why is death necessary? And I think that has been one of the more helpful kind of lines of reasoning for me, understanding the cross. And it goes something like this: a world with sin and without death is hell on earth. Because you can just imagine with men, who have a God complex, where we define what is good and evil. Imagine a world where Hitler doesn't die. Power just stacks up to the top. So death is itself, this is why the wages of sin really is death, because God doesn't tolerate anything other than a world of perfect love. And so, the vision of the new heavens and the new earth, and it's not just like a paradise, it is that. But why is it a paradise? Because it's the world as it is intended to be, a world of perfect love.
Yeah, where death will be no more.
Because sin will be no more, right? And that's why, the devil is thrown down into the lake of fire, because deception, will be no more. And to lead into my passage, our desires will be again rightly ordered. So I preached on, so this is my last sermon preaching before Easter, other than Good Friday, because Ben is preaching next Sunday. So I wanted to, we've been doing we did like hunger for blessing, hunger for touch, hunger for, forget what else. Well, that's what I was leading to. I wanted to do kind of the all-encompassing hunger for more. Because at the end of the day, the kind of the foundation of all our hungers is a recognition that hunger is never satisfied, and that hunger and desire, human desire, is it's this dynamic of life that, as it said, all symphonies remain unfinished. That you never desire is always stronger than satisfaction. And so we move from desire to desire to desire. We don't necessarily move from satisfaction to satisfaction to satisfaction. And so the story that I think shows kind of the absurdity of following our desires is the story of the rich young ruler. Because you see actually a kind of like a Solomon character who is at the top. He's got everything. He's rich. He's young. He's a ruler. And instead of, concluding like Solomon does at the end of Ecclesiastes, this is the end of all things, fear God and obey him. This man's desire tore him right in two, because the story ends with, he went away sad, for he had great possessions. Sorrowful, sad. He went away sorrowful. It's a word actually, grief, for grief. It's associated with the loss of a loved one. And so the story, if you don't know it, the story is this man approaches Jesus, and he approaches him and says, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And that I gave kind of some coloring to that as I thought about Judas in the passage I'll be talking about for Good Friday, where he talks about one will betray me. All the others say, "Is it I, Lord?" they call him Lord. And Judas says, it's not I, is it, Rabbi, teacher, you know, which is interesting. And Chrysostom says of the other disciples, and I think this is a beautiful statement, when they say, is it I, Lord? It says that they believed in his word more than they believed in themselves, right? They weren't confident in it. It was believing that because he said one will betray me, they trusted that. And that in itself was a confession of their faith in a way.
So
isn't that cool?
So what I see in that is that Judas had already reduced Jesus in his mind, which we have to do.
Absolutely.
To treat him in certain ways that we do is
and that's
just
what
a good teacher.
That's what I said about the you know, this ruler, he's not looking to Jesus as a ruler. You know, that's not what rulers do. They don't look for someone to rule them. And
he's looking for a guru.
He's looking. That's literally what I said on Sunday. I said he's looking for an influencer. He's looking for a guru. He's looking for some advice. He's looking for a TikTok.
A hack.
You know. He's looking for a hack. What must I do to inherit eternal life? Which is, and Jesus just told the story about, or just said that. Unless you humble yourself, become like a child, you won't even enter the kingdom. So he's already told them, and and it's right before this story in the Synoptic Gospel, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I think the sense is this man doesn't like the terms, because he's a man of means. He doesn't want a handout, you know. What must I do? And then he tells him.
Well, he sees himself as able. I mean, he's probably quite impressed with himself.
Definitely. And so then he quotes from the so-called second table of the law. You know the commandments. So Jesus is like, okay, I'll meet you on your own terms. You know the commandments. And then he says, you know the commandments, do not murder, commit adultery, don't steal, don't bear false witness, don't defraud, honor your father or mother. But what does he leave out? Have you ever thought about this? The last commandment, you shall not covet. Now think about that. He's a rich young ruler. Jesus quotes the second table of the law, so not the command specifically with respect to God and God's name and Sabbath. But he says, he quotes all these commands as it relates to his neighbor and human relations, and then he leaves out the last command. You shall not covet. Now, let me just pause here. And there's the word for covet in Hebrew is simply the word desire. Now, that's an important thing to understand. The word for covet is not, because when you think of the word covet, you typically think of like a deranged desire or a disordered, perverted desire. But that's not that's not the problem of coveting. Coveting is a desire of something that belongs to someone else. So it's qualified desire, because the reason that gets translated covet is because you don't want to just say that God says you can't desire anything. He wants us to desire. In fact, we were made as desiring beings. But disordered desire is desiring something that belongs to someone else. Don't covet your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's oxen or your neighbor, right? Don't covet your neighbor's life, essentially. Now, you could say that the original sin was coveting. Don't desire what doesn't belong to you. And that's precisely what led to the original sin. That the woman saw that the tree was good for food. God said it wasn't good for food. It was, and desirable to make one wise. She wanted the wisdom, that specific kind of wisdom. Wisdom is about judgment. Wisdom is not about what's true and false. It's about what's right and wrong, what's good and evil. And it's the desire to determine what's good and evil that is at the heart of all, original sin. So,
and I think of Cain and Abel. I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, covet covetousness, really, that leads
Yeah,
to.
that's right.
We could call it being butthurt too. I think that's
the
that's the technical term.
The Aramaic, actually. You might not find it even in Hebrew, but I think it's the original. But he leaves out covetousness,
Yeah.
which Paul calls idolatry, by the way, in Colossians 3.
Yep.
And then the man says, well, all these I've kept from my youth. And then Jesus says to this rich young ruler who has many great possessions, one thing you lack. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. He doesn't point to his covetousness as, hey, you have too much. He says, one thing you lack.
Yeah.
Go and sell all you have. And he doesn't notice, first of all, he didn't teach him anything. He just told him what he already knows. You know the commandments. I'm not here to teach you anything. Yeah. I'm not going to respond to you as teacher. I'm responding as Lord. Mm-hmm. So you know the commandments. One thing you lack, and then he commands him. The ruler commands the ruler, right? The rich young ruler. Go and sell everything you have and give to the poor. Mm-hmm. And if he would have just left it there, it would have been completely unreasonable, maybe. I mean, God can do whatever he wants to do. But he didn't. Consider, he tells this rich young ruler, he invites this rich young ruler in a way that he doesn't to just anybody. Like when he heals people, he'll tell them to go home. He'll tell them to go to the priest, show themselves. He says, go and sell everything you have and give to the poor, then come and follow me. Mm-hmm. He could have been one of the OGs. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is, you know what I mean? And
special invite.
He could have been the replacement for Judas instead of them having to roll the dice in Acts 1 and find, right? So, but listen to what it says. He sends out the invitation. Like he wants to draw him near. By the way, this is how you deal with people who are in sin. Mm-hmm. You draw them near with conditions, right? This is what I learned this early on in youth ministry, like these kids who were wild and like completely disruptive. I would tell them, look, I'm not, there are a few occasions where I had to say, look, you can't come to youth group until you meet with me for like 3 times, just the 2 of us with a one-on-one. And that sends the message, one, we're going to create a boundary, but I'm not just going to toss you on the other side of the boundary. Yeah. I'm going to pull you inside and invest more deeply in you. That's what Jesus is doing. Mm-hmm. He's saying, come follow me. Be one of my followers. Yeah,
I'll just share, this helps clarify a meeting I'm having later today where it's, there can be the draw to, I guess, risk sometimes an unsafe environment or undisciplined, to go with the word disciple there, because we want to appear accessible or nice. And yet there's no kinder way forward than clarity, which does create boundaries.
Yeah, that's right.
And invite someone to come to that table.
Yes, that's right. And that sometimes they don't. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Sometimes they don't want
to. But they
be.
can.
Yeah, that's right. They want to stay in control.
They know what it means to do
They don't want to change. And that's the conclusion of this. But what it doesn't say that he just went away willful or resolute. Mm-hmm. It says he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. So now he's torn in two. Mm-hmm. Because you don't go away sorrowful. Like, think about it. Most people think about going toward great possessions gleefully, happily, joyfully. Like, this is where all our joy is. This is what we want. This is what we desire. Prosperity, possessions. He's going toward his prosperity and possessions sorrowful. Mm-hmm. And it's a parable of so many lives in a way. It's not, I'm not saying it's a literal parable. This really happened. But it can serve as a parable for so many lives that chase great possessions, and it tears them away from what really matters. Not only God, but their relationships. How many deathbed regrets have there been about you don't hear people talking about the regret for not spending more time investing in their wealth because of all the time they wasted with their children. But you hear the opposite all the time. Because we will sacrifice relationships. We will sacrifice what truly matters for what truly doesn't. You know, as John describes, the world is passing away along with its desires. I think that's a really important thing to recognize and to take by faith, not only by faith because God's word says it, but just look at the people further down the road of life than you. And you recognize the desires I have now are not going to be the desires I have when I'm 60, 70, 80, you know, and recognize the illusion of desires. And so I talked about the biblical distinction between desire and delight. And it's a really important distinction. To desire is to want something that you don't have, but to delight is to want something that you do have. It is to have something and to not stop wanting it. And so, you know, they gave a number of examples, but like you can desire to watch pornography, but you can't delight in it. You can delight in a wife. You can delight in a family. You can delight in things that can be enjoyed together and shared and cherished. You know, you can delight popularity, or you can desire popularity, but you can't delight in it. You can delight in friendship. You know, and so I want to say I think you can get to the point, we would call this demented, where you call something by the wrong name. Yeah. You know? Oh yeah. Where you do get to the point where you have so given over to something that, let's say, a affair, pornography, or whatever it is, and you actually don't see correctly anymore. Yeah, you know, it can totally distort your vision. We would call that, to be demented. Yeah, to be, and that's that is a scary, gone place to be. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so, you know, one of the key texts for the reordering of desire, Psalm 37, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. There's a little book. It's a consolidation of John Piper's bigger book, Desiring God, and it was put into a small 1 or 2 chapter book called The Dangerous Duty of Delight. And I love that title because it is our duty to be delighters. It's one of those things I think oftentimes when we think of I have to do this, we think of something that steals our joy, and yet we'll find it is your duty as a husband to delight in your wife. Yes. And you'll find to take that seriously and delight in her, it will multiply your delights. Yeah, you got to invest. I mean, you got to invest in. It's like a garden, you know. Yeah, yeah. You sow into the things that, because you sow into the things that God desires for your life. That's the way to think about it. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. He will. Why? Because to delight yourself in the Lord is in part just deciding to align your desires with his. And even, I mean, that's what I think Galatians 5 is trying to show us, that what does it mean to be filled by the Holy Spirit? Does it mean I have these ecstatic experiences, that I speak in tongues, that I get warm fuzzies during worship? Maybe, but when Paul sets up the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. First of all, we want the first 3, but the last part of that list, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control. These are not inherent human desires. When Paul sets up that list, I think it's significant that he says the desires of the flesh are opposed to the desires of the Spirit. What is the Holy Spirit? It is the presence of God's desires in us. And those desires aren't exclusive to the individual me. They are desires for all for his community, for my relationship. That's why God's desire in me is that I would be patient. God's desire in me is that I would be kind. And that comes against my desire to be in a hurry, to be unkind, to be vengeful. And so there's a conflict of desires. And I have to recognize that if I follow my desires toward vengefulness and unkindness, it will not only destroy me, it will destroy the people I love, it will destroy the community God loves. And so surrendering to God's desires, that's the real essence of self-control and biblically. Surrendering to God's desires is not only I do it because God demands it, but it's also the garden I want to live in. You know, it's that creates the orchard of the Spirit I want to partake the fruits of. You know?
Yeah, you sharing that made me think of the title or quality most often given to God. Really, God's very nature is chesed, right?
Yeah.
Steadfast love.
Yeah.
That's why it's translated over and over and over again. Steadfast love. And that is what God wants us to experience in relationship with him. And he wants us to, in participation, that is the nature of our lives, steadiness. To be pluggers, right? To be steady in that, our patience doesn't come in spurts. Our love, our joy doesn't come in spurts. That God is this, and he invites us to be that. We are patient people. It's not these spikes in our life. And so to live in that place of denial of those desires and to grasp that duty of delight, we are going to be steadfast people like our steadfast God.
And it's not, again, so that we would not get the life we desire. In fact, I think the most self-evident thing that life will teach you over time is what the Bible reveals, just in a moment, which is our desires deceive us. That's what Paul calls our desires in Ephesians 4. Be renewed, put off the old self, which was, what does it say? Put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life, corrupt through deceitful desires. Think about that phrase for a moment, deceitful desires. You don't typically think of, like, how can a desire, like, I desire to take a drink of this. I take a drink. How could I be deceived? My desires are pretty straightforward. But then if it's like, how many desires to take a drink of this lead to precisely the life you don't want when you can't stop drinking this, right? Every addict knows what a deceitful desire is, right? And that, if you extrapolate out from that, Tim Keller has a great sermon on how all sin follows the pattern of addiction. It's a really helpful recognition that is how sin works. Sin gets you to follow your desires, and those desires empty your soul.
I listened
and destroy your relationships.
I listened to a fascinating podcast this week. The Carl Lentz, pastor of Hillsong in New York, had an affair. He was on a podcast, and he said one of the questions he gets most often is, how do you preach about Jesus in the middle of having an affair? And his response, I've been sitting with it, because he goes, when I get that, I want to ask people, how do you preach when you step up there with sin in your life? He says, we all categorize this.
I'm sorry, but I
don't think there's I'm not making an equivocation, but I think there is something.
I don't know. I reject that. There's a difference of living a double life, because we have to have a clear conscience before God and others, and we should be in confession with one another. We should not be living
I agree we
hidden
should live,
life.
I think he's, maybe not a blanket statement. I would say there probably are a lot of people that aren't living confessionally, that are suppressing things and getting up and preaching.
I have a real problem with that.
Okay.
With that statement. What else did he say? It was just, he just kind of turned it like a whataboutism.
No, I think I would recommend the podcast with Carey Nieuwhof. yeah, I mean, even he doesn't believe in that he should be pastoring, doesn't have plans to plant a church, spoke very honestly about his journey of recovery with him and his wife that I think has been beautiful.
That's cool.
Yeah, the depths of suicidal ideation that he experienced in that, and what it looked like to have people, the people that would call him up and say, "Hey, like let's get you back," you know, versus the people that he just never heard from, that he considered his friends, and so, yeah,
that's tough. Obviously, I think it's one of those. I think it's an exception, though. I think it's an exceptional betrayal for a pastor to.
And he spoke of it as that.
Yeah,
I do think there's something. Yeah, I agree. I think an equivocation. Yeah, completely for any sin, right? Like you yelled at your kids on the way.
The fact even
to church.
To think that Jesus permits divorce on grounds of just this sin, it shows the exceptional nature of it. Because God hates divorce. Malachi says. Malachi, yeah. The fact that Jesus would grant that exception to divorce shows just how tragic it is, and hits close to home for me with my parents' story.
Yeah,
I just think that's you're actually living a double life at this point, and that's different than
I do think there's something to be said
being accountable.
Yeah, well, I do think there's something to be said for any pastor who's just suppressing sin versus dealing with it. Again, not making an equivocation, but I do think that will lead to poverty of spirit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, and I do think that's rampant in the church. I guess I would say is that it does then become a show of Hesed, right? A show that I'm steadfast when we really aren't. So what does it look like to be?
I mean, you have to think what replaces that conviction if you're a pastor living a double life. I would think aggression, like these
absolutely.
Unfortunately, I'm thinking of people that I know.
That is so accurate because, I mean, it has become, and I think probably a good thing. I don't. It's probably a weird thing to say, but there are pastors now that are have been exposed not just for infidelity, but domineering, anger issues, and that is also wrong. That doesn't have a place in the leadership of the church. Is to be someone who's arrogant, mean. Yeah.
It's the abuse of power.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so not just, we aren't just a place to celebrate charisma.
That's why I say that I think humility is not a Christian virtue, but it is fundamental. And humility should be, in some sense, the measure of a pastor, a pastor's character. That doesn't mean you're a doormat. It doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean any of that. But to be approachable, to be teachable, to be just to be humble in the sense of meekness. I will never abuse the power that people ascribe to me. Because what pastors need to understand is that whether you see yourself as someone who has power, people give you power. A lot of people really look up to you and hang on the words that you say. And that's a terrible responsibility that should be treated. This is why those who teach will be held to a stricter judgment, God's word says. So anyway, what I want to do is transition to my offerings. Yeah. It connects to the sermon, but it builds on this idea of desire. So I've been trying to offer this book 5 times, and I keep changing it. And then this book called Being Consumed, Economics and Christian Desire. Yeah. It's a great little book. William Cavanaugh is
I think you've brought that 5 times.
I know, and I always change my mind. But it's a great book to challenge kind of like our assumptions about the assumptions about free market capitalism ultimately. And I hesitate to even say that because, I'm a beneficiary of free market capitalism, and it's not like that I have like a better system to offer. The criticisms I've read, typically from like radical Christian authors, will endorse some form of socialist or communist vision, and I think it just always goes wrong because when you see, and this is kind of the key to understanding, I think, the biblical vision, you can absolutely get there from Scripture, like when you read Acts 2 and Acts 4, as long as you see that this is never a model where it says that the people were buying, they were selling what they had, laying at the apostles' feet, and the apostles were distributing it all as they had need. As long as you see that this is never an endorsement for a system of coercion, it can never be adopted by a top-down government. This isn't a model for governments. We saw what communism produces through coercion in the 20th century and why it can't work.
So right on into the 21st century.
But it, and I think that's the story of Ananias and Sapphira. I think that is actually intended to show that this has to be based on an economy of freedom, not an economy of coercion. When they lied and said they had given all they had and didn't because they were under this sense of compulsion. And Peter says, "You didn't lie to us; you lied to the Holy Spirit." And then the Holy Spirit took them out. But this book is a wonderful, not only challenge to our assumptions about free market capitalism, but shows that we are part of the economy of the Eucharist, that we are part of an abundant economy of abundance, that God is our provider, and we operate on those assumptions. But what it does, and so I want to. This relates to the sermon. I didn't get into this in the sermon, but let me just kind of lay out the basics of the argument. Recognize that all economies are the result of human desire. What is at the bottom of the global economy, national economies, all economies, is human desire. So an economy is a system of supply and demands of goods and services. That's kind of the elemental parts of the economy. It's this exchange of supply and demand. People have demands, people have supplies. They come together through some form of exchange of supplies and demands for goods and services. But all of those demands are based on human desire. So in a perfect world, human desire is healthy and good, and
desire's the right thing.
But so desire. So you can think of like desires, the basic hierarchy of needs, food, shelter, clothing. But the thing about human beings is we're not like animals that just need survival. We don't have desires just to survive. We have infinite desires, and God made us this way. And so, Ecclesiastes, God placed eternity in our hearts, and he says, in effect, so that we would look around this world and not find anything to satisfy our desire. Our desire was designed in us that we would is infinite, so that we would desire an infinite God, ultimately. Our desires are infinite, but they're also ignorant. That's the key. This is why Paul calls them deceitful desires. And they're not just ignorant. It's a little more malevolent than that. Because again, Jesus says, John 8:44, your will is to do the devil's desires. This is why, why would we desire? Think about it. Human beings are the only creatures that have figured out torture as a mechanism to cause increased and intense superfluous pain on another human being. No animals are out there doing that. They're just eating their prey. But we torture each other in this way. We do it like in a matter of degrees. Like we can want others to hurt. That's an evil desire.
Yeah, what came to mind when you say it was just, or being willing for that to be the collateral for our desires to be met, like a sweat factory.
Yeah.
Which is us just being willing for that to happen because we need our Nikes for $80.
You know, I brought this up in a sermon. I was really convicted by this a few months ago, that I think one day, Lord willing, that we get more of a conscience and not less. I think one day generations will look back on us in the way we look back on like slavery.
Absolutely.
Because we were willing to just turn a blind eye to, these shoe factories in Malaysia and child labor and all of that it's all a supply for our demand for cheap shoes,
Yeah. Well, I mentioned last Sunday I preached at Refuge 2 weeks ago. These terrible outcomes of war, death, especially of the innocent, and how we're upset about 24 cents more to the gallon.
Yeah.
And
that's when we'll start speaking up.
Yeah,
when our gas goes
hurts
up.
Our wallet.
It doesn't matter about a school of girls getting blown up.
I recognize what that does. It makes your bread more expensive. I'm not unaware of all the implications of it. But I'm watching in the news kids, digging out, utensils from the rubble and thinking,
or looking for their parents under the rubble.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So, let me I know Eddie's got to go. So, at noon. Okay. So what is a free market? Okay. Free market, according to Milton Friedman, famous economist, the central problem of economics is how to ensure the cooperation of free individuals without coercion. That's the central problem. And he suggests the answer was provided by Adam Smith, who saw that in the absence of external coercion, so if you get basically the government out of the economy, two parties enter into exchanges because it will be mutually beneficial for them each to satisfy their respective desires. Okay? So this is the kind of this is why free market economy is good. Is it, one, you get the government out of it because coercion is bad, tends toward evil. But then the assumption that then it just becomes automatically good. Well, Adam Smith made this qualification that it will be mutually beneficial for satisfying desires, provided the transaction is mutually voluntary and informed. And that latter qualification is the key. It has to be informed. Now, he thought of being informed in terms of an exchange without intentional deception. Like, for example, if someone sells a house without divulging termite damage or roof leakage or whatever, that's what was meant by informed. But from the biblical perspective, the deception doesn't actually begin with another party in the exchange. It begins with desire as such. That human desire is already misinformed because our desires deceive us. Our desires don't actually lead us to satisfaction. And so this isn't like a way of offering an alternative to free market capitalism. It is just to show you that if you assume that you can just participate in this economy as an inherent good, and you'll be led to inherent goods for your life, to the good life, you're already deceived at the very foundation, because you have to actually start holding your own desires in suspicion. And so he talks about, in the first part of the book, he talks about what is true freedom. What is true freedom? True freedom this is the major assumption of, say, freedom in the sense that we typically use it in American vernacular. We think of freedom as a freedom of choice and like getting the government out of it. And I'm happy to keep the government out of it. But we think of freedom as freedom of choice. But he goes back to Augustine, and he made the argument that true freedom is not being able to choose what you want, but being able to choose what is good. Mm-hmm. And if you start with that, you recognize, well, then if that's what true freedom looks like, slavery looks completely different than what we would think. But to choose what is good, biblically, you have to give up the will to determine or define what is good. Because, again, every addict thinks he's choosing what is good for him in the immediate, when before it was an addiction. But he'll tell you, and I say addict not to pick on addicts, but because, again, if you recognize that all sin really functions like an addiction, it illustrates the point that you're the donkey following the carrot dangling above your face. But another way to put it is true freedom is not being able to choose what you desire, but being able to satisfy your desires. That's the key. If you just do what you want, you won't get the life that you want. If you, in fact, Paul says in Galatians 5, the desires of the flesh are opposed to the desires of the Spirit to keep us from doing what we want to do. It almost seems like a contradiction in terms. Wait, my desires are designed to keep me from doing what I desire? That's what he's saying. But the sense of it is that your desires are actually designed to lead you to a life you don't want. And how many, grown men do you see, they've followed their desires, the freedom of their choice, unfettered, and it has led them to a life of regret.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, talk about parenting 101 is as a parent, your job is to help your kids not do everything that they desire to do.
That's right. Yeah.
But and as a parent, to be a good parent, you're killing desires daily so you can show up for your kids. Yeah. Desires that you desire. It would feel so good if I just yelled at them right now. Yeah. Or it'd feel so good if I just every night of the week had a babysitter and never had to interact with them. Yeah. Right? You can get to this point of stress and being so overwhelmed that you think the relief valve is to just be free from it. But to kill those desires and plant the garden you want to grow.
That's right. And it's about cultivating godly desires ultimately. What are the desires God wants for my life, for my family, for my community, for my church, for my and that's why I think self-control is included in the the fruit of the Spirit, because again, self-control recognizes this kind of inner conflict that we would have. Because like even Jesus saying, deny yourself. Well, who's the self denying the self? And it's a recognize that every human is already a kind of dichotomy, a kind of bifurcated being that is torn. We're torn. We have these conflicting desires. But James talks about this in James 4, that our conflicts outside begin with these conflicts on the inside. And so recognizing that, kind of evaluating our desires becomes a really important part, like spiritual discipline in our daily life. And one thing you can recognize is that, to use old language, the biblical language of desires of the flesh, desires of the spirit. Desires of the spirit will always lead you to, or desires of the flesh will always lead you to sacrifice the ultimate for the immediate. Right? So it is as simple as thinking in terms of delayed gratification. Because the desires of the Spirit, that's why self-control is included. Desires of the Spirit will get you to sacrifice the immediate desire for the ultimate. And it's for ultimate satisfaction. To live a satisfied life. And that doesn't mean satisfied in the sense you stop desiring. We never stop desiring. We will, at some fundamental level, the human spirit is a desire for God. And that's why it's we are created is in a kind of ecstasy, a kind of self-transcendence, and that won't be satisfied until Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
But
and it a couple things. One is develop a vision.
Yeah.
Meaning be farsighted. Look in the distance and say, what is the life that's good, and how are we going there? I think of my time leading Coffee O as the executive director, and there was times that we had to choose foolishness, meaning a path that didn't lead to glamour or sometimes even grand monetary success, much to the chagrin of some people who knew how to make money.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to prioritize individual lives, not overlook the children we were there to serve. And man, that's going back to the rich young ruler and the hack he was looking for. So oftentimes we're looking for a hack that actually is out there for what you want. At the end of the day, is you want to make a ton of money, there's going to be some hacks for that.
Yeah.
I've met people who travel 3/4 out of the year, and they're getting what they want, but they're missing out on their family.
Yeah.
And now I do caveat, like, there's amazing sacrifices our military families are making.
Yeah, absolutely.
For us. I'm not talking about that. But if you're looking for wealth, fame, success, it goes back to my scripture, which is there's ways to gain the world.
Yeah, and lose your soul.
And lose your soul.
Yeah.
So, let the steadfast love of the Lord define what's good and true and beautiful for you. Yeah.
The good life.
Yeah.
And cultivate habits of sowing seeds.
Yeah.
Planting sequoias.
Yep. And practicing resurrection. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah.